Hello, I'm Bernie Hayes. Today's guest is Reverend Darryl Gray, and we'll be talking about religions, politics, and so much more today on The Bernie Hayes Show. Welcome back. I'm Bernie Hayes, and like I said, my guest is Reverend Darryl Gray. Reverend Gray, how are you, sir?
I am fine, Dr. Hayes, and it's always a pleasure being in the studio with you. You're looking great.
Oh, you look great too, and thank you so much for that. Yeah, I understand you have a new position. Tell us about that.
I recently, as of February the 1st, was selected to be the new executive director of Missouri Faith Voices. It's an interfaith social justice organization. We have about 150 churches, mosques, and synagogues that we represent throughout the state of Missouri. And I took over for the Reverend Dr. Cassandra Gould, who's moving to Washington, D.C. To become the national strategist for Faith in Action, which is a national interfaith social justice organization. And so we're going to be, working with local churches and imams and rabbis within their congregations and faith communities, engaging and re-engaging them around issues of social justice, be it voter registration, voter education, mobilization, issue-oriented initiatives, and so I'm pretty excited about it.
I can imagine. So that's, you don't hear that much about interfaith communities and interfaith reaction and interaction. And that should be a wonderful thing. So what would your position be? I mean, what is your mission, more or less, as a president?
Well, we have a staff of about 6 across the state. We have an office in Jefferson City, Columbia, Springfield, St. Louis, and we're working to open an office in Kansas City. And so we kind of function with 2 different kind of clusters of people. Mm-hmm. We deal with community leaders and influencers in one setting, and we deal with faith leaders in another setting. And I'm really excited about the faith leader table because it's an opportunity to share, as I said, with imams and rabbis and Christian leaders on theology that we can agree on and social issues that we can agree on. We understand, and I know you understand, that among the faith community, there are things that we differ on, from Muhammad to Moses to Jesus. But one thing that we all agree on is that as faith leaders, we have an obligation to care for the least of these. We have an obligation as faith leaders to be the headlight with social justice issues and not the tail light, to encourage, to inspire, to motivate, to teach. And so my job is to bring those people in the room. And my job is to make sure that our organizers are helping them within their own spaces on, I guess, informing and teaching their congregation how to be better social justice champions. For example, Reverend Larry Rice and the work that he's doing with the unhoused. Well, that's something we want all of our faith communities to begin to look at. How can we help Dr. Rice in what he is doing, but within our own sacred spaces, how can we help the unhoused community? And so we talk about how to identify resources, how to train people to do this kind of work. And so that's the mission of Missouri Faith Voices. We also follow legislation. We'll show up in Jefferson City and we'll speak for issues, we'll speak against issues, voter suppression issues, we'll speak against, we'll talk about gun violence in Jefferson City. But we'll do the same thing in St. Louis. We'll meet to talk about issues like community development in St. Louis and to make sure that community development dollars are going to the north side of town and making sure that there's input from the faith community around that issue. In Jefferson City, the issue might be economic development or minority economic development. And so we'll make sure that faith leaders understand the issue so that they can articulate those issues to their congregations so that their congregations can be more actively involved and civically engaged.
So I guess communication there is the key.
Yes, sir.
And I understand you also you're now leading your own congregation. Tell us about that.
I am really excited. The last 6 months has been wonderful. I am the new pastor of the Greater Fairfax Missionary Baptist Church. It's in the 3rd Ward, a historic ward in our city, and it's an historic church. Our church is 141 years old. We're at 2941 Greer Avenue. Our former pastor, who is now our pastor emeritus, is Reverend Dr. Heyman Fortenberry, who really has been a catalyst in the black community in ensuring that the black church has always been involved and engaged in making sure that the black community is involved and engaged, and making sure that the black church speaks truth to power. And so, yeah, two new positions, senior pastor at Greater Fairfax and executive director at Missouri Faith Voices. My wife said, well, you really never went into retirement, and I guess you're going to get paid for the work that you've been doing. I said, well, I believe that I've always gotten paid for the work that I've been doing, and I'm just blessed that I was selected for these positions, and I look forward to the work.
Reverend Fortenberry, he's still going to be active, I'm quite sure.
Oh, listen,
Yeah.
Reverend Fortenberry will never give up. Reverend Fortenberry is 90 plus years old and hasn't stopped yet. And I look forward to his continued mentorship and guidance.
And the 3rd Ward, the Bosleys are there, they're still
absolutely.
involved. Yeah, 3rd Ward there.
Oh, the Bosley family between former Mayor Bosley
Right.
and the Alderman Brandon Bosley and Congresswoman, Committeewoman Bosley, and then State Representative Bosley. It's a political family.
Yeah, the Bosleys are quite active.
Yes, sir.
So what made you become an activist? I know that you worked with Jesse Jackson. I know that you worked with Dr. King. I know that you worked with SCLC. And you've been moving around the country doing different things and leading people and congregations. So how did you become involved? Well, what pushed you to become an activist?
My father and my mother both. My father was 25 years Navy veteran. When he got out, he did community activism, basically, labor work in South Carolina, of all places. Mm-hmm. My mother was a teacher and instilled within us, the concept of education, proper education, adequate education, and reading. And so I was a reader. I read everything on Black history. I read everything on civil rights. And I think that was my foundation. But, with my dad working with Dr. King and growing up in South Carolina, I think that was my initial push. And growing up in a segregated society. I mean, growing up in, segregated schools, white school, black school, white lunch counter, black lunch counter, white water fountain, black water fountain. So growing up in that era, I think helped me to realize that we needed to do better, we should do better, we could do better. And as I grew older, the examples around me, like Dr. King, like Dr. Abernathy, like Rosa Parks and Septima Clark, these are the people that I idolize. Malcolm X, these are the people that I idolize. And they were very real in my own personal life. And so I think that was why. But, Dr. Haynes, if I had to narrow it down to something, I think it was just the basic need. I believe that we're called. We're called to respond to the needs of the moment. And with those type of examples around me and the circumstances around me, I think that for me it was a natural call.
You told me that Reverend Abernathy gave you your first job. You worked with Reverend Jesse Jackson's campaign. You knew everybody at SCLC, and yet and still you are a minister. And I want to come back and talk to you about why we see you in the pulpit, why we see you leading this new congregation, and why we also see you demonstrating on the steps of City Hall.
Yes, sir.
And leading marches through the Central West End. I want to come back and find out all that. And also want to get your take on what's happening with this pandemic. Back with Reverend Darryl Gray after this.
New Life Evangelistic Center is celebrating 50 years of God's faithfulness. For many of those years, Bernie Hayes has been a direct part of the work of New Life Evangelistic Center. I thank God for Bernie, his faithfulness, and how he is such a legend when it comes to broadcasting throughout the greater St. Louis area. Will you join Bernie and myself as we celebrate the 50 years of God's faithfulness? I want to involve you in the planning committee, for we got a lot of great things in store in 2022. Why don't you call us at 314-421-3020 and be a part of that committee, or go to www.newlifeevangelisticcenter.org. Will you celebrate the 50 years of God's faithfulness along with Bernie Hayes and myself and so many others throughout Mid-America? I know that the Lord has ministered to many of you through the work of New Life Evangelistic Center. We'd like to have you share your memories with us. So will you call us at 314-421-3020 or contact us at come by 2428 Woodson Road in Overland, Missouri? Yes, we're celebrating God is faithful.
Hear this, you who trample the needy and do away with the poor of the land. Let justice roll on like a river, righteousness like a never-failing stream. You trample on the poor and force him to give you grain. Therefore, though you have built stone mansions, you will not live in them. Though you have planted lush vineyards, you will not drink their wine. For I know how many are your offenses and how great your sins. You oppress the righteous and take bribes, and you deprive the poor of justice in the courts. Seek good, not evil, that you may live. Then the Lord God Almighty will be with you, just as you say He is. Hate evil, love good.
Welcome back. I'm Bernie Hayes. Our guest is Reverend Darryl Gray. Reverend Gray, you you're now a new congregation. Tell us about that, your church again.
Yeah. Well, it's the Greater Fairfax Missionary Baptist Church. Mm-hmm. It is located at 2941 Greer Avenue in the 3rd Ward. I tell people we're just east of Grand, but it's a historical black church, 141 years old. Our former pastor, our pastor emeritus, Reverend Dr. Heyman Fortenberry, was always community involved, civically engaged. And it's interesting because a lot of people ask me why I went back into the pulpit, particularly because they've seen me marching in the streets. And Dr. Haynes, my role models, my idols, Dr. King, Dr. Abernathy, your fraternity brother, Kappa Alpha Psi, Dr. King, Alpha Phi Alpha, Jesse Jackson, Omega Psi Phi. I mean, all of these preachers, Greek men, believed that the black church was the catalyst for social change and social justice, that the black church was created to be the voice for the voiceless, to be that clearinghouse, to be that community center, to be that focal point in black communities. And I believe, like Dr. King and Dr. Abernathy and Reverend Jackson and others, that we've got to do more than preach the feel-good sermons on Sunday. And I'll give you a good example. During the Ferguson uprising, Reverend Tommy Pearson opened up his church for a lot of the activists, people like Dr. Cassandra Gould and Rabbi Susan Talvey and others. They opened up their churches and their synagogues to protesters. And then we moved past that and got to the Stockley protest. And my job was a liaison between the black church leadership and the black activists. And black activists would say to me, Reverend Gray, we're suspect, we're cynical of the black church now. And I said, why? And they said, well, during Ferguson, a lot of the churches would invite us in, but not a lot of pastors would come out. They would invite us into their churches, but they wouldn't join us on the street. They wouldn't join us on the front line. And yes, that's problematic, particularly in the era of Black Lives Matter, particularly in the era of not just Stockley, but George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and all these other things where activism, it seems to be the order of the day. And we've gone back to protesting. We haven't given up politics. We have a black president, we a black vice president. We've accomplished those things. In St. Louis, we have a black female mayor. So we understand that politics is important. We understand that the marching is important. But I think that we're at that period where we've got to figure out how to balance the protests, the politics, and the policy. We have to continue to do all three of those things, but we have to balance them. And I think that the black church is in probably the most unique position to be involved in all three, to be a leader in protest, to make sure that our protest is nonviolent.
Yes, sir.
To make sure that we understand in our protest the 6 principles of nonviolence that Dr. King taught us. That at the end of the protest, we can reconcile with our adversaries. That the black church is in the most pivotal role because we speak to the most black voters every Sunday morning than anyone else. And we have an opportunity through the black church to encourage people to register, to educate people on the issues. And as a black church, to also not just serve those within our congregations, but to serve the host community that surrounds our congregations. I told somebody, we have to be equally involved with those who sit in the shadows of our steeples than those who come and sit in our pulpits. And so we have to be engaged in our host communities, those communities 3 blocks north, south, east, and west of where our churches are. And then from a policy point of view, most of the most educated people in our communities are the religious leaders. And so we have to use our education to help others, to educate others. Mm-hmm. Not necessarily the 3 R's, reading, writing, and arithmetic,
sure.
But educate them on the issues of the day, be it voting rights, gun violence, mass incarceration, prison reform, criminal justice reform, economic development, the pandemic, you name it. Our obligation is to make sure that our people are educated and informed.
I once interviewed Reverend William Gillespie and asked Reverend Gillespie, I says, Reverend Gillespie, what are they talking about the separation of church and state? He says, they're inseparable. They are one. Let me ask you this, sir. There's an assault on Voting Rights Act, especially of African Americans and people of color. Well, what's your take on that, and how can we say compromise on that?
You always talk about the most critical issues, Dr. Hayes, and I appreciate that. I think in the black community, if I had to list the top 3 issues, voter suppression would definitely be in the top 3. Poverty and gun violence would probably be the others. But if we are actively engaged in the political process, then we can turn those other things around. There is a direct assault on the rights of black and brown people when it comes to voting. Out of our 48 states, out of 50 states, 48 have submitted the most egregious, the most insidious voter suppression laws that we've seen since Reconstruction. The restriction on voter ID, the assault on absentee balloting and mail-in balloting, those things that have more or less promoted an increase in voter registration in black communities. We saw it in the last presidential election, the increased number of black and brown votes utilizing absentee balloting, particularly and mail-in balloting because of the pandemic.
Yes.
But we see, across the country, and in Missouri in particular, we see dozens of votes, of bills and pieces of legislation that would restrict and make it harder for people to vote, particularly minority people, than we've seen in recent years. Why is that, Dr. Hayes? It is simple. It is political power.
Well, how can we combat that, sir? How can we fight back? We only have a minute left in this segment, but give me just the crux of how we can fight back, then we'll come back and talk about it in depth.
Voter registration.
Okay. So that's what we need to do is
voter registration.
Voter registration is the key. Okay. Reverend Darryl Gray is my guest, and so much to talk about, so much knowledge that he has, and we're trying to get as much of it as we can in this segment. But don't forget now, we're 2428 Woodson Road in Overland, Missouri. Reverend Larry Rice has been at the New Life Evangelistic Center for more than 50 years, helping those in need. And we'll be right back with Reverend Gray after this.
The Bernie Hayes program is produced at NLEC-TV right here at 2428 Woodson Road in Overland, Missouri. It's our new headquarters since they closed the 1411 Locust building. We're working to get back into that building. In addition to that, trying to help so many people through a wide variety of safe houses, training programs, transportation assistance, so many ways people are getting help because of all of you that are supporting the work of New Life Evangelistic Center. Now, if you'll send a gift of $25 or more, we want to send you this special, the Bernie Hayes Show cup. And we're giving that to people. It's just a way of saying thank you. So when you send your gift, request a cup. We'll be happy to get it off to you. It's New Life Evangelistic Center, P.O. Box 473, St. Louis, Missouri. That's 63166. You can give online at NLECSTL.org. Now I'm really asking all of you to join us in praying. The needs are so phenomenal at this particular time. So many hurting and homeless people are contacting us daily, but we're able to help them because of each one of you that are praying, caring, and sharing at this time. Tell your families and friends about NLEC-TV and get directly involved yourself.
And our Black History subject for today is Gwendolyn Brooks, who was born in Topeka, Kansas on June 7, 1917, and raised in Chicago. She was the author of more than 20 books of poetry, including Children Coming Home, Blacks, Riot, in the Mecca, The Bean Eaters, and Annie Allen, for which she received a Pulitzer Prize, and A Street in Bronzeville. She also wrote numerous other books. In 1968, she was named Poet Laureate of the state of Illinois. In 1985, she was the first black woman appointed as consultant in poetry to the Library of Congress, also known as Poet Laureate. She also received an American Academy of Arts Letters Award, the Frost Medal, the National Endowment for the Arts Award, the Shelley Memorial Award, and fellowships from the Academy of American Poets and the Guggenheim Foundation. She lived in Chicago until her death, December 3rd, 2000. Gwendolyn Brooks.
So many people are being left on the streets homeless all day long without anywhere to go because downtown St. Louis continues to fight efforts to reopen 1411 Locust. Yes, the downtown neighborhood organization that has continued to fight the New Life Evangelistic Center for the reopening of 1411 Locust and lobbied the Slay administration, the Cruzan administration to keep it closed and close it down must be strongly resisted at this particular time. We have a new mayor. I believe she cares about the homeless. Tashara Jones needs our support. If you'll join me in prayer over this, if you'll join me in resisting these special interest groups, if you want to believe the time for action is now, please contact me. I'm Larry Rice at P.O. Box 473, St. Louis, Missouri, at 63166. You can call me at 314-421-3020. I thank God for faithful viewers of Bernie Hayes, and now the time for action has come.
Welcome back. My guest is Reverend Darryl Gray. Reverend Gray has two new positions. He's the minister of his own church now, and also the leader of a wonderful interfaith congregation that's his community, shall I say, that's going to be quite active in the state of Missouri. But Reverend Gray, as a reverend and as a compassionate man, what do you think about the homeless? What do you think about what can we do to help those in need? Reverend Larry Rice has been celebrating 50 years now of trying to shelter those in need. But what you as a person, not only as a pastor, but as an individual, what do you say about how can we help those in need?
I think we have to open up our churches. And, I want to say Reverend Larry Rice has been doing a phenomenal job for so many years. And I'm a big supporter of what he's been doing. And I've always advocated that there needs to be more resources made available to Reverend Rice and the work that he's doing to try to rebuild and refurbish and renovate the building that he has used for years to serve the unhoused community. And I'm hoping and would encourage Mayor Tashara Jones and our county executive Sam Page to do whatever they can to help Reverend Rice in that endeavor. There's another person, Bishop Michael Robinson, has also been doing a phenomenal job in working with the unhoused people and bringing congregations together like mine and others to become warming shelters and shelters for the unhoused. I've made a commitment to make Greater Fairfax available to the unhoused, to work with Bishop Michael Robinson in that regard. And I would encourage all of our churches in the area that are able, and realizing that all churches are not able, but we have churches who have reception halls.
Sure.
We have some churches who actually have gymnasiums that are not being used. Churches who have kitchens. We have churches who have buses and vans. And so I'm committed, personally as a pastor, my church is committed at Greater Fairfax, and we are committed to working with Bishop Robinson, we're committed to working with Reverend Rice, we're committed to working with the city, but we do need to do more.
How can we reach you, Reverend, before it gets too late? Well, no, how can we reach you?
You can reach me by calling 770-842-5210. It is on the screen, or you can email me at RevDarryl@MissouriFaithVoices.org. 770-842-5210. You can get me directly, and that number is always available.
Are you and your church on Facebook or any other social media?
Yes, thank you for asking that.
Yes, sir.
Our Facebook is just Greater Fairfax Missionary Baptist Church.
Greater Fairfax Missionary Baptist Church.
Yes, sir. And every Sunday morning we do a Facebook Live for our worship service, and we welcome you. We welcome you to join us in person. We do social distance, 2941 Gray Avenue, or we welcome you to join us on Facebook Live when we live stream every Sunday morning at 11 p.m., Greater Fairfax Missionary Baptist Church.
You've been a scholar of the Bible, sir. How do you see this pandemic? Was it predicted?
I think it was. Listen, we look at the book of Revelations in particular. We look at the reality of the pestilence that will happen in the end days, the wars and rumors of wars. We're looking at a potential war between Russia and Ukraine right now. Russia has 150,000 troops at the border on 3 sides of Ukraine right now. NATO will have no other choice but to get involved. And if NATO gets involved, the United States has got to get involved. And so when you look at what is going on right now, the pandemic, the wars and the rumors of war, we are definitely living in the last days.
Okay.
And it is important for our churches, mosques, synagogues, temples, to come together to preach one message, and that is a message of peace.
Reverend Gray, we want to say thank you again. Thank you for taking time out during this pandemic. Thank you for taking our time in this inclement weather. It's a hot day one day and the next day it's cold. But for taking your time and effort to come visit with us here at the New Life Evangelistic Center. And we want to support you. We want to thank you for all that you're doing and pray that you'll continue to do it. And thank you, sir. Thank you. And for those who are not vaccinated, please, it's so easy to get the vaccination. Get your shot. Keep yourselves healthy and protect others. Get a vaccination. I'm Bernie Hayes. Have a great day. Thank you for your support of the New Life Evangelistic Center, Reverend Larry Rice, and all others involved. Have a great day. Stay safe.